All right, so what comes next for your kids and grandkids, along with their teachers? The Department of Education, given a failing grade by the White House, we are live asking the administration where they plan to go from here. That's Top in the Hill on NewsNation tonight.
My administration will take all lawful steps to shut down the department. We're going to shut it down and shut it down as quickly as possible. It's doing us no good.
Shut down the Department of Education fully? Not yet. But President Trump today beginning the process of potentially winding it down. Hello, good evening. Welcome to Washington. I'm Blake Berman. This is The Hill on NewsNation. Tonight, the transformation is underway at the agency that the president has vowed to end. President Trump's executive order, you see it there, now directs Linda McMahon to end the Department of Education and give authorities back to the states. In the meantime, it also calls for any programs receiving federal funds to end DEI initiatives. The president, though, suggested that key pillars within the department will move elsewhere.
If you look at the Pell Grants, it's supposed to be a very good program, Title I funding and resources for children with special disabilities and special needs. They're going to be preserved in full and redistributed to various other agencies and departments that will take very good care of them.
Tonight, the American Federation of Teachers responding with a 4-word press release: see you in court. A live look at the White House now, where in moments the administration will tell us when they believe they can officially shut down the agency for good, if that even can happen at all. But first, we begin tonight with one of the governors who was in the room with the president today, and here's why we're starting with one of the governors. Governors all across this country could now shoulder more responsibility for your kids in their schools. Jeff Landry, good enough to join us tonight. He is the governor of Louisiana, Republican in that state, live with us from the North Lawn of the White House. Hello, Governor. Good evening. Thanks for being with us.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Of course. So I wonder, sir, what really changes with all this? Because as you know, there is not a national curriculum standard. It's not like the decisions of curriculum come from Washington. I just heard the president say things like Federal Student Aid, Office for Civil Rights, the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitative Services. Those are going to move to other agencies within the federal government. We know that there's going to be layoffs at the Department of Education. So is that really the only change tonight?
No, I don't think so. I mean, in all the discussions that we've had with the president, that being governors, he has just made it clear that what he wants to do is send the money directly to the states and let us utilize that money in the best way we see fit. Look, America works best when states are acting independently and that the instructions are not coming from Washington, D.C. What I've heard a lot in a lot of the questioning that I've gotten today is that it seems as though people don't realize the amount of federal funding that pours into our state with all kind of strings attached. What we want is that money unfettered and our ability to place that in the classroom where it belongs, keeping focus on two people: parents, which are the most important voice in a child's education, and students. I mean, the teachers, who are the most important person in those child's education.
So your state, 19.5%, so let's call it about 20%, one in every $5 or so, comes from the federal government when it comes for, as it relates to education. I got to imagine, Governor, there might be some parents sitting back tonight saying, wait a minute, how do we know that money is still going to flow, that we're going to still get every single penny, every single dollar that we need? How would you reassure them?
Well, I mean, look, President Trump has been a president who has done this more than any other president before him in promises made and promises kept. I've never had the president promise us something that he hasn't kept his word on. The question is whether Congress will give us the flexibility needed to ensure and rest assured that those parents whose child is relying on those dollars are going to get those dollars. Look, what we know is that every dollar Congress sends to the Department of Education, only say 50 cents or 60 cents or 70 cents ends up in our state. What we want is the whole dollar.
Governors, I spoke to Josh Green. You know him well. He's a Democrat from Hawaii. And I asked him, I said, you know, this is a unique situation because you got a Republican in the White House basically saying, okay, let's empower some Democratic governors. And here's what the governor from Hawaii said to me last week when I spoke to him about this, and I want to get your reaction on the other side.
No, I'll take it. I spent time with the president a couple of weeks ago with all the other governors. If that money flows to we governors, we'll make good use of it.
So he said, yeah, I'll take it. And Governor, I guess it gets to the question, what about the concept of, okay, a Republican president saying, you know what, let's empower some Democratic governors? Do you take issue with that?
No, I don't, because I think that this president is answering the call of the American people, and he's transcending across party lines. Look, we don't mind competing with other governors. In fact, I was with Josh Green in the White House when the president talked about that. That's how this country is supposed to work. 50 states, 50 laboratories of experiment, giving us an opportunity to see if we can educate our kids better than what has happened in the past. We know that America is failing our kids, and our educational system is dismal when compared to other countries. Give us an opportunity and let us compete.
All right, we got to leave it there. He is the governor of the state of Louisiana, Jeff Landry, with us tonight here on the Hill. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, so it's important to note that even with the stroke of the president's pen today, the Education Department still exists and will unless Congress gets involved. Here's why. The 1979 Congress passed a bill to stand up the Department of Education. President Jimmy Carter signed it into law. Republicans have been talking about dismantling the agency ever since. For example, here's President Ronald Reagan's State of the Union address just a few years later.
The budget plan I submit to you on February 8th will realize major savings by dismantling the Departments of Energy and Education and by eliminating ineffective subsidies for business.
Now, executive orders from the president direct agencies to take action at the federal level, which is what we saw today. But it's Congress who starts the lawmaking process, and it has the power of the purse as well. There's a question of political will, too. In 2023, Congressman Thomas Massie, a Republican from Kentucky, filed an amendment to an education-related bill that called for the Education Department to be completely abolished. But when that vote took place, every single Democrat voted against that possibility, and so too did 60 Republicans. The overwhelming majority of those 60 Republican members currently a part of this Congress as well. So what happens next? NewsNation legal contributor Jesse Weber here with me tonight. Hello, Jesse. So an executive order from the president today on a really big issue. This is the Department of Education. Explain here what the president can do and essentially what is still TBD at this point.
And just to add a little bit more to what you said, yeah, this doesn't dismantle the Department of Education, and I think it would be unlikely. You need a supermajority in the Senate, 60 votes. They're 53 to 47 to Republicans, and you need Democratic support. Unlikely. So what does the executive order do? So it doesn't dismantle the Department of Education, but what it could do is starve it. The Office of Management and Budget, they could make sure the funds don't go to the Department of Education. There could be an effort, as you said, to shift responsibilities to other agencies. There's already been an effort to let go federal workers. It's basically try to cripple it as much as possible while maintaining the core functions. The issue, of course, becomes whatever they end up trying to do, this will meet and has already met legal challenges. And the number of legal issues that are being raised are things that we've seen with other legal issues. Right. And I can get into that as well. About
basically the teachers union today, the 4-word response, see you in court. What happens next?
Okay, there's a number of arguments they're going to raise. First of all, separation of powers. This wasn't congressional intent. Congress intended for the Department of Education to operate. This is basically the executive branch usurping that authority. They would also say this was a violation, we call it the Administrative Procedure Act. It's a violation of federal law that you can't dictate that an agency doesn't do what it's supposed to do. They would also say that it's an argument that it's a violation of the Take Care Clause. The executive has to make sure that the laws are faithfully executed by taking away the responsibility of the Department of Education so they can't operate. You're actually doing that in violation. So these are a number of arguments that you have already seen and I think will be put forward in the legal challenge.
Jesse Weber, NewsNation legal contributor. We'll leave it there. Thank you, sir. Talk soon. Appreciate it.
Of course.
All right, so this was obviously a big moment for the president, right? He campaigned on doing this, and here he is basically 2 months from Inauguration Day and signing this executive order. Joining me on the North Lawn, Harrison Fields. He is the principal deputy press secretary in the Trump White House. Harrison, thanks for being with us tonight here on the Hill. Appreciate it.
Good to see you, Blake.
You as well. So let me start with the response from Democrats. We heard from the president today. We just heard from Jeff Landry, the governor, as well. Here was Chuck Schumer. He said, quote, across the country, property taxes will go up, while the quality of many schools will go down. Presidents cannot make departments, and they cannot eliminate them either. Only Congress can do that. So let me take that one by one here, Harrison. It seems like the argument from Democrats is going to be that there's going to be a funding shortfall, and it's going to fall on the states and property taxes and tax increases. That's sort of the argument that they're laying out. What would the White House say tonight?
Yeah, it's a weak argument, and Chuck Schumer, he's a lost man after his party is basically just leaving him out in the cold these days. But the reality is the Department of Education is funded to the tune of multiple billions of dollars, in which now will be delegated to the states. Listen, we have a Department of Education since 1979, and since then, what has it done for the individual education of America's students? A lot of people back home are scratching their head and thinking, I don't think very much. We have a crisis in this country with poorly educated students. Look at the city of Baltimore. In 2013, 15 of its high schools graduates were basically illiterate. That is a travesty in this country. We are spending money, a lot of money on education, some of the most money out of most developed nations, and we still are failing when it comes to education. So we have a problem on our hands, and the states and localities are the best people to fix it.
So we're in Washington, obviously. You're on the North Lawn. I got the Capitol building behind me, and you know the political dynamics, Harrison. When this was brought up, abolish the Education Department in 2023, when Republicans took up an education-related bill in the House, 65 dozen House Republicans voted against the concept of eliminating the Department of Education. Does the White House believe that you have enough support to potentially go down the legislative path, or are you not even thinking about that at this point in time because of the political realities?
Well, the paint is still wet on the executive order, and now is the implementation of it. Now we have Secretary McMahon going to look and see how we whittle this agency down. And yes, there will be conversations with Congress on how to effectively eliminate it through Congress. But right now,
do you think you have the support?
We are just arguing that. I think we do. I mean, 2023, President Trump was not in office, and the reality is no one thought this could be done because no president had the courage to do so. So a lot of Republicans, we just had governors. You just had a governor here before. We had a bunch of Republicans here in support of this effort, and I think Democrats are also going to look at our education system and say the Department of Education does nothing. If this means my governor, my mayors, my school superintendents will now have more power in education, I think they're going to realize this is a good idea.
What do you make, though, of this Wall Street Journal poll days before the president took office? 61% opposed the idea of closing the Department of Education. When parents hear this around the country, they're going to hear shutter the Department of Education, and it seems like that's catching their attention, Harrison.
Well, if you talk to parents in my home state of Florida and you ask them how is education being done in Florida compared to a state, let's say like California, a lot of parents are going to say we want the education of Florida, in which they champion school choice, where we're not focusing on DEI or CRT, and where students and parents are actually getting those dollars in their pockets. Listen, the teachers' unions, other powerful politicians are not the people that should be dictating how our education should go. We need to localize education. This is exactly what this executive order does. We have a crisis on our hands when it comes to the education of our students. We have to bring it home. Washington, D.C. does not have the proper tools or the effective operation to make sure our students succeed.
Let me leave you with this. The president once again said this today as it relates to Linda McMahon. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
She's had nothing but success, so it's tremendous to have you, and hopefully you won't be there too long, but we're going to find something else for you, Linda, okay?
He reiterated the line there that hopefully Linda McMahon is out of a job. The president, we know, is in this job for the next 4 years, for the next 46 months. Is Linda McMahon out of a job before President Trump leaves the White House?
President Trump, take him for his word. I mean, this is what the executive order does.
So yes,
it essentially
so it's
dismantles the Department of Education.
I guess that gets to, can you guarantee, does this White House believe that the Department of Education is fully gone within the next 4 years?
President Trump is a man of his word, promises made, promises kept. I think the Department of Education will be bye-bye very soon.
Leave it there. Harrison Fields is the Principal Deputy Press Secretary with us tonight here on the Hill. Harrison, thanks for the time, sir. Talk to you soon.
Have a good night.
You as well. All right, still to come tonight here on the Hill, the war on fentanyl. Is the U.S. winning that battle? Have we turned a corner? Are Anna Koyman live on the other side of the break with the new numbers and how the government is confronting the crisis? Plus, a NewsNation exclusive. Our Allie Bradley one-on-one with the new Border Patrol chief. Why he thinks the cartels are preparing to attack his agency. That's minutes away as well. And Mission Impossible? NASA's high-tech plan to hunt down asteroids, another NewsNation exclusive. Big day here in Washington. This is the center of politics. I'm Blake Berman. 4 minutes away. The Hill returns.
Machinery. Report fever, stiff muscles, or problems thinking, as these might be life-threatening. Shaking, stiffness, drooling, and trouble with moving or balance may occur.
Take control by asking your doctor about Ingrezza.
With the Chase mobile app, things move a little more smoothly. Deposit checks easily and send money quickly. That's convenience from Chase.
Chris, we watch NewsNation. You guys got something very special there. So keep grinding like you guys always do, and I feel honored to be asked back.
This is the place that respects all Americans.
That's why NewsNation is getting traction.
NewsNation. News for all Americans.
Government with a massive drug bust. The U.S. Coast Guard offloading more than 45,000 pounds of cocaine, 50 pounds of marijuana today at Port Everglades in Florida. Street value there, $500 million. The Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem in attendance.
We are cleaning up our communities from drugs like fentanyl and cocaine and marijuana, the dangerous substances that fuel addiction, crime, and destroy lives. We're protecting American people.
Now, the CDC reports drug overdose deaths are on the decline here in the United States. And a Wall Street Journal report shows that in October of last year, the number of overdose deaths dropped 25%. NewsNation Now weekends anchor. Whoa, look at that. You got a graphic. Anna Koyman with sound. My gosh, I don't even know if I get those. Koyman's Coiner. Anna Koyman with us. Hello, Anna. This is turning the corner. Some good news. A lot of ways to go still.
Yeah, but also the Trump administration making some news that they are extending this national emergency declaration as it is related to the opioid crisis. It was set to expire tomorrow, and they're giving it another 90 days. So they will now have until mid-June to have that flexibility in the way that they handle this fentanyl crisis. Take a listen to President Trump about why he says this is still a top priority.
More Americans died from fentanyl last year than died in the Korean War, or the Iraq War, or the Afghanistan War, all of them combined. That's why I've placed large tariffs on Mexico, Canada, and China, and they will remain in place until these deadly poisons stop pouring into our country.
So hopefully everything that the Trump administration is doing is going to be a real shot in the arm, Blake, to continue this trend. But let's go ahead and take a look at those numbers that you had from the Wall Street Journal and the National Center for Health Statistics. So between the months of October 2023 and October 2024, there was that sharp decline of about 25%. Wow. Yeah. But that was still 82,000 deaths. It's hard to even get your head around that. And also, take a look at the last decade, and the numbers are still high. So you can see why this is still a top priority. And then taking a look at some other numbers for you, how does opioid overdose deaths compare to other unintentional deaths, like falls, accidental falls, or car accidents? I mean, it looks like a mountain compared to it. So you can see why this is still a national emergency and why we need to continue taking care of it.
Yeah, it's in that first graphic, you love to see the numbers coming down, but that second one puts it in perspective, right? Like it is still a massive, massive issue for so many families all across this country.
Yeah, and look, substance abuse doesn't discriminate, right? Doesn't discriminate on class, color, or creed, and you just hope these numbers don't turn into a political football. No. The way Democrats see this is a W in the Biden column. That was before the Trump administration even came into place, right? And so is that there is a decrease in fentanyl use, is that there's more Narcan that is available. Also, Democrats are saying, look, if we're really going to take this fentanyl crisis seriously, what we need to do is not cut all of these programs that help with substance abuse and mental health, because the two often go hand in hand.
All right, our Anna Koyman's Corner, graphic with sound and all. We'll catch you this weekend, Saturdays and Sundays here on News Nation, 1 o'clock Eastern. Thanks, Anna.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, talk to you soon. Still much more ahead. Here on the Hill, are the cartels about to wage war with the Border Patrol? Our Allie Bradley live on the other side of the break. An exclusive interview with the new head of that agency. And as March Madness kicks off, let me ask you this question. What's going on with the NCAA, and what are governors potentially going to do about it? There was a big story in one state this week. I'll explain. Stay with us. Here in Washington. Welcome back to the Hill here on News Nation. An American prisoner released today. NASA gears up to hunt asteroids. A fighter throws his hat into the ring to become a new politician, and Obama's pick to win it all. Our Hannah Brandt with what's happening here on the Hill and more. Hello, Hannah.
Hi, Blake. George Glesman was detained by the Taliban back in December of 2022 while touring Afghanistan, and he just became the third American to be released by the terror group since the start of President Trump's second term. And NASA shifting its focus from astronauts to asteroids. NASA currently tracking an airplane-sized asteroid that's due to pass by Earth tomorrow, but asteroid anxiety may soon be a thing of the past. NewsNation got an exclusive inside look at NASA's Jet Propulsion Lab in California, where they're building the first ever spacecraft designed specifically to hunt down these large asteroids. It's called the Near-Earth Object Surveyor, and NASA says it's going to be able to detect about 90% of these life-threatening asteroids up to 30 million miles away. We've got to wait a bit, though. It's set to launch in 2027. Plus, some major news overseas today. UFC champion Conor McGregor announcing his candidacy to become Ireland's next president. This comes just a few days after his visit with President Trump here in D.C. for St. Patrick's Day. His lengthy post to X reading in part, quote, "Vote McGregor and have your voice heard." And today, former President Obama getting a last-second shot off his March Madness picks. Obama has number 1 seed Duke winning it all in his men's college basketball bracket, beating out another number 1 seed in the final, Florida. Then over on the women's side, he also has 2 top seeds in the final, South Carolina and UCLA, with the Gamecocks emerging as champs. And that's what's happening on the Hill, Blake.
So here's what we did. We had my dog pick a bracket.
Did you really?
And we gave our dog treats, and 2 teams, and whichever treat she ate, that team lost.
And how mad are you going to be if that one wins?
Well, that's what I want to see, is how my dog does against the average population, okay, against the general public.
Yeah,
because at the end of this, we'll be able to track it and see, did you beat my dog or not? And if I beat my dog or not, I don't know. We'll see.
If I beat your dog, I'm going to be impressed, honestly. I'll take it.
I'll give you the score here in a few weeks. Hannah Brandt, thanks so much. Appreciate it. All right, meantime, back over at the White House, President Trump signing an executive order to officially dismantle the Department of Education a short time ago.
My administration will take all lawful steps to shut down the department. We're going to shut it down and shut it down as quickly as possible. It's doing us no good.
Now, it's important to note the president is not shutting down the Department of Education completely at this point in time. Congress needs to act to actually do that. The executive order, though, is expected to cut roughly 4,400 jobs, or several thousand jobs at least, save billions of dollars as well. Our Kelly Meyer joins us live at the White House. She was inside the room when the president made the announcement today. Kelly?
Yeah, surrounded by students and desks in there as he signed this executive order. It seems more symbolic than anything, though, today, Blake, as the administration, they've already begun to dismantle the department and isn't close to shutting it down, at least right now. President Trump is promising to take, quote, all lawful steps to shut it down as quickly as possible, saying he wants education back in the states.
I can tell you from dealing with the governors and others in the state, they want it so badly. They want to take their children back and really teach their children individually. Probably the cost will be half, and the education will be maybe many, many times better.
So in the East Room, Trump's former rival, Ron DeSantis, Texas Governor Greg Abbott was there, along with current Education Secretary Linda McMahon. Trump saying he hopes she is the last education secretary and says he may have to find her a new job soon. But Democrats and unions are already pushing back on this. Democratic Senator Chuck Schumer saying property taxes will go up and the quality of schools will go down. He's also calling on the courts to stop Trump's, quote, tyrannical power grab. And Trump saying he hopes Democrats vote for this. Ultimately, as you said, it's up to Congress to decide whether to abolish the department. And a White House official tells me they will move those other critical programs from student loans to low-income programs for low-income students and students with disabilities to other departments and agencies. But what's unclear, Blake, is how quickly that will happen and if that move could mean a potential disruption in those services for those crucial programs. Blake.
Our Kelly Meyer live at the White House tonight on a very big day. Big announcement as well. Kelly, thank you. With me now, the man who's got a pretty good pulse of what comes at the top ranks of Democratic politics. He is the former Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaigns, Dan Cannon. Hello, sir.
Hey, Blake.
The White House says these key pillars, these key parts of the Department of Education aren't going anywhere. They're basically going to move them into different parts of government. What's wrong with that?
I don't believe them, and no one should. I mean, what they're trying to do here is dismantle government and the spending. They're not just going after a couple thousand bureaucrats in a massive federal government. They're going after the dollars to pay for tax cuts, and they've been telegraphing this with every single budget framework they have.
You really think that they're going to yank education funding as a result of this?
I think if they're serious about what they say they were doing in the budget blueprint, if they're really talking about balancing the books on the back end and delivering $4 trillion in tax relief, it can only come from a few places. But here's the thing. There is a scandal in education in this country, federally, and it is this, that for 25 or 35 years, the federal government has promised to pay for 40% of disabled students' educational needs because they mandate the local school districts have to pay for those kids, right? They pay for 13%. I think Democrats should, one, call this for what it is, a rating of the U.S. education funding for mostly low-income students, low-income districts, and special education kids, but then also be bold and tell voters this is really about pushing the buck onto the general population instead of those kids.
Here's the interesting thing. You have a Republican president in the White House basically saying, I'm going to give some power back to Gavin Newsom in California. I'm going to give Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan. Go on down the list. I spoke to Josh Green, the governor, Democrat of Hawaii, the other day. Basically said, look, Trump's giving you more power. Do you like it? Here's what he said. I want to get your reaction.
No, I'll take it. You know, I spent time with the president a couple of weeks ago with all the other governors. If that money flows to we governors, we'll make good use of it.
So what about that? I mean, Josh Green said, OK, I'm good with it.
I wouldn't trust this. And again, if the money flows, I don't think that's going to happen. They're going to have some disruption. They're going to try to put this into a budget framework where they can get the money cut. But the thing is, the money already flows to governors and states largely as it is.
Right.
90% of school district funding comes from property tax at the local level levied by locally elected school boards.
You're going to make the property tax argument. Chuck Schumer was just making the property tax
argument.
That's where Democrats are going?
That's how schools are funded in this country.
Interesting. All right, we'll leave it there. Dan Cannon, and catch you other side of the break. Appreciate it. Also tonight, here from the Hill, a member of the Sinaloa cartel in U.S. custody tonight after being caught by Arizona border agents. The Border Patrol Chief Michael Banks revealing the Mexican national admitted to working as a foot guide, leading illegal crossings into the U.S. Our Allie Bradley is live with the very latest on how all of this went down, as she just has a brand new exclusive interview. Allie?
Yeah, hey, Blake, they're obviously going after the criminal cartels. When I talked to Chief Mike Banks, he said that they have a pretty stark warning for the guys on the south side. If and when they come face to face, Border Patrol won't be holding back. So in this exclusive interview, the chief said the threat of the cartel violence spilling into the United States is a very real concern, whether it be bomb-wielding drones or shots being fired across the southern border. He says that if this continues, they're ready for it. Take a listen to what he had to say.
We do have the technology available to counter drones, and we are deploying more of that technology. And yes, you're right. We have seen, cartel on cartel violence that involves drones. We're impacting the cartel's ability to make billions of dollars, right? And so at what point do they decide that they're ready to push? I can tell you this. Border Patrol is some of the most highly trained, most professional law enforcement agency in the country, and we stand ready to defend the borders, and we're not going to hold back. We're not going to surrender.
All right, so when it comes to the gotaways, Blake, those are the people that have successfully come into the country and evaded law enforcement. Chief Banks says they're looking at about 100 a day on average. Now compare that to a peak in April of 2023. They saw over 3,700 gotaways in a single day. But Banks says 100 is still too many, so they're leaning on the Department of Defense using technology and resources to be able to see what they haven't been able to see before.
The best of the business, Allie Bradley down there at the southern border with the NewsNation exclusive tonight. Allie, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, so how about this? Buy or sell? Where do you see who you got some stock advice from last night? The Commerce Secretary talking about Tesla and whether you should buy it. Was he right to do that? Why, that caught my attention. And would you look at this? Wow, out there in Hawaii, live look, a spectacular sight, a volcanic eruption underway. Nature's beauty when the hill returns.
My name is Robert Sherman. I'm a correspondent for NewsNation.
Do you think those fears are justified?
The perspectives of all Americans matter
when it comes to the nationwide conversation.
NewsNation, news for all Americans.
Do you think those fears are justified?
The perspectives of all Americans matter
when it comes to the nationwide conversation.
NewsNation, news for all Americans.
All right, welcome back here to the Hill on NewsNation. Shares of Tesla, the 12th largest company in the world, selling off a touch today. Down on some news potentially of a recall involving Cybertrucks. The slight sell-off coming after a buy call from the most unusual of places.
If you want to learn something on this show tonight, buy Tesla. It's unbelievable that this guy's stock is this cheap. It'll never be this cheap again. I mean, who wouldn't invest in Elon Musk?
Now that is the Commerce Secretary, Howard Lutnick, going on television last night in his official capacity as a representative of the United States government, encouraging you to buy Tesla stock and giving an opinion of why. To put it in other words, the Commerce Secretary basically dishing out a stock pick. It, of course, comes as Tesla vehicles, facilities, and owners have suddenly become targets and victims of crime. And the administration calls that, and experts have told us they believe, it's domestic terrorism. But NewsNation asking the press secretary today if buying Tesla stock is now the official position of the White House.
I think the Commerce Secretary was reiterating that the president supports an American-made company like Tesla, who produces a very good product.
But that is just one side of the aisle. Now let me take you over to the other. The American Federation of Teachers last month called on the asset managers who run the retirement accounts for teachers all over the country to review its Tesla investments. Here's the head of the union, Randy Weingarten, saying in a statement at one point, quote, according to the American EV Jobs Alliance, EV swing consumers view Musk negatively. Just this week, we saw Tesla stock continue to shrink faster than a Cybertruck in quicksand. And they are not alone. Last week, 23 New York State senators called for its state pension fund to dump roughly $850 million worth of Tesla stock. Now, to be clear, these are retirement savings, where green is supposed to be the driving factor, not red versus blue political divides. I looked up, by the way, the New York State Common Retirement Fund asset listing. For example, it owns $2.5 billion worth of Amazon, basically the same amount of Google. Both of those stocks are down double-digit % so far this year, but no calls for those to be sold because they're not run by the guy who leads Doge. Full panel here with me now. Caroline Downey is a staff writer at the National Review. Dan Cannon, former Battleground States Director for the Biden and Harris campaigns. Lori Watkins, former policy advisor to President Obama. Joining us as well, Ronna McDaniel, former chair of the Republican National Committee. Hello to you all. Nice to have you all in. I know I threw a lot out there, both sides of the political aisle. I mean, look, the last week of the election, I call it silly season, right? It just gets to be that point in time. And it feels like, Rana, we've gotten to that point in time with Tesla where there is just so much out there, to the point where you have the Commerce Secretary going on TV last night and dishing out a stock pick. You've run a large political agency, essentially. Should he have done that?
Well, I know Howard pretty well. Obviously, he's a finance guy. He came from Wall Street.
Yep.
I don't have as much of a problem with the Commerce Secretary saying to buy stock in an American company that employs thousands of Americans, that creates thousands of jobs, than the teachers union saying to divest. I mean, what credibility does Randy Weingarten have except for being completely political? And let's look at her valuation, right? 40% of fourth graders in 2024 are below reading level. That's the lowest we've had since 2002. So let's look at her valuation. She's failing. Why aren't we looking to replace her as the head of the largest teachers union, who is in charge of educating our children, and now she's getting involved in stock picks? I think that's egregious.
I could give you a list of companies. I gave you two that are down double digits, that they're not saying, you know what, asset managers, go look into that and go sell them because it's important to our retirement accounts. They're doing this only because of Musk.
Wrong, Blake. And you're leaving out a really important part of the conversation, which is Tom Cook, Jeff Bezos. They are not CEOs that are actively within the federal government trying to dismantle and gut public education.
Was at the inauguration, so I guess where does it end?
So who cares? He's not running Doge. He's not inside the government, completely dismantling and getting rid of our democracy and all of the institutions that people rely on: education, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, etc. The National Park Service. Those CEOs are not there. He needs to go back to his day job.
Is that a reason to sell retirement fund investments?
I get it. And in fact, this is not just the teachers union doing this kind of thing. For years now, there have been divestment campaigns in the environmental movement on big oil. I mean, oil company stock, oftentimes the most predictable, high-value growth stock you can possibly have. But some states and large funds divested from that because they want to be part of the climate change movement. There's a similar strain here. But Lutnick, to me, seems like someone trying to save himself, because I think he's the first guy thrown overboard when the tariffs fail and the economy goes bust and the inflation goes up. He's off the ship. He's trying to audition for Musk and Trump at the same time.
I'm digging into my inbox because I just got an email in the commercial break. Top House Oversight Dem calls on an investigation into Secretary Lutnick and Tesla stock. Here's the thing, Caroline. I hear what Rana says, but when you're saying buy this stock, for every dollar that goes into stock, whatever, is a dollar that could have gone into another stock, and it didn't, right? And I heard Republicans for years talk about the government not picking winners and losers. And that didn't happen last night.
I get that the vibes feel like crony capitalism, right? But I think we can all agree, counterpoint, that for the government and government officials to pick favor with companies, that's not good. But you know what else isn't good? Government subsidies, because that's exactly what that is. So the taxpayers, for the longest time, we've been forced to support electric vehicles like Tesla without our consent via electric vehicle subsidies. So if we can agree that this is picking winners and losers, then we should also agree that subsidies are the exact same thing.
Is this picking winners and losers, Rana?
I don't view it that way. I think Howard just went on as a former stock guy and said, this is a good stock. It's an American company. Let's push it. And push a company that's employing thousands of American workers. I really have a problem with the teachers union doing this. I heard you talk about divestment from oil and gas. This is an EV company. This is where the Democrats have been. This is a green company. They were in favor until they were Republican. And that's the bottom line here.
So what about that? You loved him until he said, hey, I'm with the other team.
No, the other problem is, what about the big three out of Michigan? I know you went to college in Michigan. What about those big three that are all American auto companies? Donald Trump is a pro-union guy, right? He supports unions. From that to the display of Teslas on the White House lawn, all of this is inappropriate, and the American public can see right through it.
I want to say something about Randy Weingarten. I think it's beautiful that the teachers' unions are now suddenly concerned about maximizing returns for their pensions. But what about the last 60 years? I do seem to recall that Biden's American Rescue Plan included an $86 billion bailout of the teachers' unions' pensions without strings attached. They've been abysmally managed for decades, and now we're expected to believe that they worry about Tesla tanking? What?
I just threw a lot out there, right? Like, it's fascinating when you see what one side's doing, what the other side's doing. This is the 12th largest company in the world. It was a lot bigger than that, getting smaller via market cap, and it will be in the news. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Thanks for coming in tonight. Rana, thanks so much. Talk to you soon as well. All right. Coming up here on the Hill, 64 teams, one champ. March Madness kicks off. Cannon's wearing his Badgers tie, if you didn't realize that. But I'm going to explain something that happened this week in West Virginia, why the governor's upset, and why you're going to see more of it coming up. All right, welcome back here to the Hill. Look at that. Aloha from Hawaii, a volcanic eruption happening right now. Fountains of lava, as you can see there, from Hawaii's most active volcano, Kilauea, reaching as high as 7,700 feet today. The molten rock thus far contained hasn't hit any neighborhoods. Beautiful pictures, though, out of Hawaii. All right, Elizabeth Vargas reports. Still to come here on News Nation. She's covering President Trump's standoff with a federal judge over his deportation flight. She's speaking to Bill de Blasio, Chris Sununu. That's coming up in about a minute and a half here on News Nation. Time for my take tonight. March Madness officially underway. 68 teams battling to earn the right to cut down the nets and be crowned as the king of college basketball. The 69th team could be seen as West Virginia University, the last one left out of the field. A shock to the basketball experts. Now, West Virginia's governor, Patrick Morrisey, so upset with that decision that earlier this week he announced an investigation into the NCAA selection committee. But you have to go all the way back to 2021. The Supreme Court comes in with a 9-0 decision stating that the NCAA was violating antitrust laws. College sports changes forever. For example, last year, the NCAA went after the University of Tennessee for what it viewed as recruiting violations. Tennessee then fired back with a lawsuit. The Commonwealth of Virginia signed on as well. And you know what happened? The NCAA settled. Now, I'm not here to opine on whether West Virginia should be in the tournament or not. The experts can figure that one out. Here's the point. With a weakened NCAA after that Supreme Court ruling, we very well could be seeing the start of a new trend. Governors and attorneys general willing to play some hardball.